back! In this video, I'm going to show you how to sew the Purrfect Pouch Production Edition. The Production Edition is basically the pattern I should have gone with from the very beginning, except I'm an idiot and made that choice way too late in the design process. All self-deprecation aside, the Production Edition is supposed to be a fast sew. I removed some of the extra parts, I simplified the pattern, and I sped it up, specifically for people who want to make a buttload for sale. So let our imaginations fly free, and let's get rolling on this sewing. Before we even get started with any of the tutorial, you need to make sure that you have everything cut out, laid out, and interfaced. If you are going to put on something really snazzy like a label, have it on before you get started with the tutorial. So let's go over all of the pieces so you know what we're dealing with. You're going to have, for the exterior, the zipper gusset for the upper half, and then you're going to have the gusset for the lower half, and two exterior pieces that are the front and the back of the bag. Then for the inside, your lining is going to be exactly the same. Now, I am using a PU waterproof canvas by OtterTex for my lining, so I did not need to interface anything. Also, this bag does not have to be overly structured because you're going to be using bias tape to bind the inside. But for the fabric, since I am using a canvas, I did go ahead and interface it rather with a woven interfacing. Before we can start sewing, we have to mark all of the centers on each of the pieces. We're going to mark the centers on both of the gussets, and then we're going to use the main pattern piece to go through the front and the back pieces for both the exterior and the lining. And we're going to mark centers on top and bottom and where the zipper gusset guide is going to be for the side seams here. Now I've gone ahead and I've marked all of my centers using a gel pen. You can use whatever it is that you like. I just put the tiniest of marks along the edges, and I don't go any deeper than what the seam allowance is going to be. And that's a good point to remind you that the seam allowance for this pattern is a 1/4 inch instead of a whopping 1/2 inch like the original. For the first step, we're actually going to start working on the gusset. So get your zipper tape out. I'm going to take my zipper tape and I'm going to just use that upper gusset portion to measure, and I eyeball it. I go usually about 0.75 to a whole inch off of the sides here and over here and cut. And the reason I do that is because I like a little extra wiggle room. Then I'm going to use fire to just melt the ends of the zipper tape because I don't want that fraying. Zipper tape is really prone to fraying. Next, I'm going to use Witchcraft to slide the zipper head on. I might actually fast forward through this because sometimes I do it really well and really fast and it drives people up the wall to see it. And then there are times where I'm proven wrong and need to actually, you know, get one of those funky jig things. But we're going to avoid that today. We're going to have some confidence. Woo! Look at that! Confidence! Now, this is going to be the front edge of the zippered gusset. Instead of having a piece at the top and a piece at the bottom like you have in the original pattern, we're going to actually just go ahead and use this end of the zipper tape to go against the front of the bag. That's going to have its annoyances, but bear with the process. It is actually a cool look once you're done with it. So I want you to lay it out in the direction that you want it to go. Using the zipper head as a guide, it will shape into an arrow pointing in the direction of where it's going to close. So I usually want it pointing off to my left. And so like if I was looking at the bag this way to the front, then this is going to be the right side of the bag if it's on your body. Anyway, I'm gonna lay out the fabric the way I want it, especially since it's directional, and I'm just gonna flip it over like that and take clips and clip it down. Don't hesitate to use as many clips as you feel comfortable with. And one of the things that I feel like I could do because I could flex, but I'm not going to do in the video because sometimes it just doesn't work for everyone, I am actually going to avoid stitching the exterior and the lining at the same time and just do a basting stitch. It does ensure I get a much better look. Okay, I'm gonna set my stitch length to about 6 millimeters, and all I'm gonna do is baste this really closely to the zipper's edge over here, right along the edge, because I don't really care to do much more than that. And I can also kind of feel where that zipper head is. Now, if you've ever had that problem where you get close to the zipper head and you just want to plow through it and you don't want to change to a zipper foot, put your needle halfway down, lift the presser foot, and slide that zipper head out of the way. Of course, making sure not to accidentally yeet it off of the back of your zipper. But if you do that, then it won't do the wavy, bump around, and then you can continue going with your basting stitch. So go all the way down to the end, removing the clips as we go. And it's a base, so I'm not gonna back stitch because why bother? Okay, now we're ready for the lining. Now back at the table, what we're gonna do is we're going to take the zipper and we're gonna put it face down, and then we're gonna take the right side of the fabric for your lining and we're gonna place it on top. So you've basically sandwiched the zipper, and we're going to clip that down into place. This is again going across. Whee. So fun. Oh my god. I feel like I always have to talk through the video no matter what. Does anybody actually listen? Am I talking to myself? I don't know. But I'm going to keep being creepy on the internet. Okay. And if you get a little waviness, so this OtterTech stuff that I use, the waterproof canvas, it doesn't have a lot of give, so it's not gonna like crinkle and form. So I don't really worry too much if I get a little bit of wrinkling in here because it works itself out on the machine. But I just wanted to explain that in case you were wondering. So you should have the exterior right side onto the right side of your zipper, and then on the opposite side of the zipper, right side to wrong side of zipper, you're gonna have your lining. Okay, now we're gonna sew the real stitch. I'm gonna move my stitch length back down to normal, and for me, normal at this machine is roughly 3.5 millimeters, just in case anybody was curious. Okay, and now we're gonna do a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So I'm going to line this all up, get my thread tails to the back. I am, in case anybody's curious, I am using an industrial Juki. So this is an industrial sewing machine. You do not need an industrial sewing machine for this particular bag. So I'm going to start my stitch and move along. And I can see, oh, there's that annoying zipper head that's sitting right here. I'm going to actually slide it back this way because I have more room. So we're going to just temporarily slide it out of the way. And I came to a pivot, yay. So the needle's down. I'm going to lift and slide that zipper head back out of the way again. And we're coming up to the end where now we backstitch for fun. So now we need to top stitch the zipper so that the fabric stays where it's supposed to be and doesn't try to turn itself out toward the zipper and get caught. To start with the top stitching process, we're just going to take our fabrics and move them both outward and away from the zipper tape. And we're going to clip the ends together. Boop. And move down and clip as many as you feel comfortable with. I just give it a little bit of a tug. Note, don't tug from this side because you could, rip the zipper teeth apart and that's gonna suck. So don't do that. I've done it. There's a whole like ask me how I know series that I should do, I swear. So I'm clipping generously, as you can tell. And boom. And I don't really worry about pressing with an iron or anything right now because I just take this over to the machine and just kind of hold it, and I'll show you that. So I'm going to switch to a top stitch length, which is 4.5 for me. And I'm going to just move everything out of the way and get this underneath the presser foot, right where I want it. And for me, for top stitching, I just obey the side of my foot here, which is about 1/8 of an inch or so. So that's pretty much, it works out for me. For anybody with a different machine or a different kind of presser foot, you may want to use your marking guides to figure it out. Now, as I go along, I will show you how I kind of tug these together to make sure that this pulls away and I don't end up with any spots that are lumpier or closer to the zipper teeth than I'd like. So I'm going to start first by moving that zipper head a little bit out of the way so I have plenty of space to work with. And we're going to start the stitch. And again, as I go down, I just kind of line up these edges here and slightly pull, and I can hold that down with my fingers. And I do leave the clips in place for this because you're going to need them in a little bit when you baste that shut. I just don't bother basting at this stage. So put your needle down and get the zipper out of the way. And now you can continue. See how nice that looks? It's so pretty. Whee! Now, before we make an egregious error and start attaching the bottom gusset to either side, it's going to be a heck of a lot easier to go ahead and mark that center now while you have this in a position that is relatively flat. And I just tend to eyeball it and use that initial marking on the opposite side to mark it on the zipper side, because again, you're going to need to use this marking when you're attaching the front of the bag. Now, for the bottom gusset, I'm going to lay it out as if this is how I would like to see it around the bottom of the bag, and I'm going to flip it up so that the right side of the bottom gusset is on the right side of the upper gusset. So right sides together, we're going to go ahead and clip that in place and just put it over here. And I am going to actually just snip these threads right here because it's getting a little ridiculous. So we'll just snip those out of the way. Now, I do like to YOLO the moment on this one because it is such a short seam. So that's why I go ahead and I place my lining over here, right side to lining on the back side. I will admit though that if you don't feel confident doing this, it's absolutely okay for you to just not. Now, I only do the one side, and then when I'm at the machine, I will pull this over, but only after this one is secure. So I'll show you all of that at the sewing machine. So I'll move my machine back down to a construction stitch, which is going to be 3.5 millimeters. Get my thread tails to the back, make sure everything is nicely lined up again, and again, 1/4 inch for your seam allowance. Please don't divert from that because this is an extremely measured seam allowance. So we're going to start that stitch and work our way down. Just like that. Whoop. Boom. I'm going to just go ahead and trim those now. So you see I have that stitch and it's gone through the zipper. So now the zipper is protected. The zipper head's not going to slip through, and neither is this going to fall apart on me. Now what I'm going to do is flip this all the way around, and I'm going to put the other right sides together at the top here. And then pull this up. And that's just why I waited to sew the other side, is because see how it has a little bit of resistance. You don't want to deal with that when you have them both kind of like clipped in place. So it's a little easier to just wait. And then you can kind of like abuse this side of it over here. All right, so we're going to place that down 1/4 inch away. Move that out of the way a bit so I can actually get in there and start the seam. And we're gonna go, go, go. Whee! There we are. Yeah. keep forgetting this one's not computerized. This is not going up to the top. All right, so that's basically done. So I'm going to show you how to top stitch it right here while because why bother going back to the other view? So I'll move back up to a top stitch length. Again, 4.5 for me. And I just flip everything out as it would be if it were assembled properly to the bag. And I'm just gonna pull on this just to make sure that both ends are relatively flat and I don't accidentally gather. And I'm gonna top stitch right along that edge. And this will be the second stitch that basically secures that zipper in place. So we're gonna do that also on the other side, but I'm gonna show you how I do this. So you see I didn't clip that thread. I'm just going to chain these together and I can snip the thread when I'm done. So I'm gonna just pull on that a bit, make sure it's nice and flush, and top stitch all the way down to the end. There we are. Now I can clip it, and then I can just clip that, and now we have our gusset. Now that we have our gusset basically put together, we're gonna wanna baste down the lining and the exterior at the very edges on all sides, just to make sure it doesn't shift on us when we start attaching the front and the back panels, because that is gonna be an exercise in I don't know what, but something. So for this edge here with the zipper, you're not gonna need to baste anything, obviously, but you are going to want to kind of tug on this and line up your center marks and just put some clips in here, because you're basically just gonna go through, and since I'm on a flatbed, I'm gonna do it this way. I mean, you could just flip this inside out, but it's, whatever floats your boat. I just make sure they're nice and flush, and if they're not flush, you've done something wrong and I can't help you. So then we'll go to the other side and we're just going to put clips down. You can remember my genius of leaving clips up here. I am going to flip them around though, because it is easier to take the clips out when the flat edge is against whatever you're going to be sewing on. So, because they're meant to be able to just clip, like push down and pull away, but nobody ever does that. We just throw them across the room by grabbing the clips incorrectly. All right, so now we're gonna go do a basting stitch on either side, but in order to increase my production, I'm also going to grab the front panel and the front panel lining, and I'm gonna put them together, wrong sides together, like that. So wrong sides together, and I'm just going to put, make sure my markings are correct and they are lined up, because the zipper gusset for the seam line guides on either side are not dead center. So you don't want to do that, or if you ever want to have the bag like sit in a very specific way, like crossbody, it'll flip. So you don't want that. So we're going to line everything up, lay these out. And actually, I would like to do this from the front. I like to do it from the front because I don't care if the lining is off a little from, like off sides or something. But if the exterior is laid out all wrong, then I get a little fussy. So we're just gonna line up everything here like that. And this one shifted, you can see that. So we're gonna move it. And then I take it to the front and I just kind of lay it down and just push along the edges to push everything out, and it works out. So we're gonna baste this around the edge, and we're gonna baste this. Set your stitch length to whatever you want for your basting stitch. I do 6 millimeters, and I'm going to just go around. We'll see if we're playing bobbin chicken. At this point, I absolutely should have wrecked this bobbin, but we'll see how it goes. And I'm just gonna go around, again, flexing my experience for the video to show that I can basically turn this with one hand. One day you'll be a sorceress like me. It'll be fine. Go all the way around the edges. And you see I'm staying within the seam allowance because this is just a temporary stitch to hold things together. I don't even bother back stitching. Like, who does that? People typically do that. All right, so we've got that. Like, it didn't even catch that, so I'm just gonna grab that real quick, just to pull back on it a couple of steps and get that down, because it'll just be so much easier on me to attach this in a bit, if that's correct. All right, now we will go and we'll do the same in here. And this is for the gusset, and I'm just going to whee all the way around. I'm about 1/8 of an inch. You can see I have my 1/4 inch line is right there. And as long as I'm within that 1/4 inch, it's good. Because then the seam is not going to show on the outside once I'm done with the bag. All right, that is the first basting stitch. And now for the other one, remember that we don't need to worry about doing the zipper here. So to do that, we're going to start from one of the seams of the bottom gusset and go all the way to the other seam of the bottom gusset, but not worry about going through the zipper, because there's no point. There we are. All right, I can clip all of that, throw away the excess, and then everything is nicely secured and basted for what's next. So what's next? Preparing the back of the bag for the belt strap. That's right, the Purrfect Pouch is designed initially for somebody to wear it as a belt bag. However, a lot of people enjoy wearing this style of bag as a crossbody. Therefore, I like to provide a generous 45 inches in length for the strap, because you just never know how large someone's Dr. Nigel Channing will be. I'm going to go ahead and roll out and use my cutting mat to determine the length. So this is a 36 wide mat, so I'm going to do 36. And another 9, just like that. We're going to cut the end, and because I'm using nylon webbing, because again, production edition, this is super fast, I am going to use heat to just melt the ends here so I don't have to worry about them fraying over time. So that's the one end. We're going to do the same thing to the other end. And be careful, don't do anything that I wouldn't do with the fire, because reasons, don't sue me for emotional damage. I'm not responsible for your poor decision making. Cool. All right, now that I've gotten the disclaimer out of the way, let's assemble the belt strap. One more thing to note is you need a tiny bit off to the side here. So basically you have this piece, the male piece of the buckle, which is going to have this generous 45 inches, no jokes. And then the female side is going to have the shorter amount that's just going to have it kind of hung off of the side over here. So I tend to just grab about 6 inches of the material here for the webbing. So I'm going to measure that over here, because God knows I can't count. So we'll just do about 6 inches. We're going to grab that, boop, clip it, same thing, melt the ends, very carefully melt the ends. Now these ends are going to get caught on the inside of the bag, so they're not as critical as the other end that is going to be floating on the outside. So for assembly of this particular piece is really simple. We're just going to take this up through the back and over this side. Now this is technically adjustable, but I don't use it that way. So all I'm going to do is put some clips on this to keep it in place. So clip here and a clip here, and this is just for the basting process, and I basically just leave it just like this, not going to worry about it. But for the sake of kind of laying this out, I'm going to just set it here as I would expect it to look if I were basically wearing this bag. This is where I would expect this to be. Now, for the next step, we're going to take the adjusting slide, and we're going to take one end of the longer strap and put it through the left side, and then go down on the right side. Leave this little floof right here, because you're going to want that. And making sure everything is still level, like a hill. you're going to go up on the left side of the male buckle and then down on the right side of the male buckle. And then you'll have like all of this. Now this adjusts and this adjusts. Now, depending on what you've gotten for your hardware, this might not be like the exact instructions, but this is what I like to do. And then you can take this and you can basically loop it up. And then, that's why I said to leave this side kind of loosey-goosey, and then put it down like that. And that is going to secure it in place. So when it's being worn, it's not sliding all over, it's not flapping against the body or flinging outward at all. And it's a lot easier to wear. Now this part is kind of hard for me to explain because I lack spatial awareness. If this is the back of the bag and this is against my body, then how do I want the strap to be arranged as I'm looking at it? So this is wrong because we're going to want the strap to come up and around and snap in from the front. So we basically want the snap sides to be able to come around and do this number like that, and we don't have to worry about like accidentally flipping this around so that it's, you know, hanging around in the front of us. So we're just going to set this the way that we think it should look and then bring in the strap to the inside like that. And I tend to put my straps up here, not down here. Do not confuse the marking on the lower edge with strap placement. The strap should be higher up, especially if you provided D-rings in the gusset so that you could allow people to wear this crossbody like a regular little purse. And that's fine if you want to do that. Just be aware that the lower you go, the less of the center of balance exists and it'll flip the bag. So again, another ask me how I know moment, because that's what happens when I do all the things. Okay, and then we're going to flip this inward, and in the exact same spot but on the opposite side, we're going to go ahead and clip down the belt. And if you need to, you can actually put this on and give it a little bit of a test and just make sure your orientation's right and the way that you expect the person to wear it is accurate and it works the way it should. Just think of it like a belt. This is what you want your belt to look like. And of course, the belt needs to be on the interior, otherwise it's going to, you know, not get caught in the seams. Now we're going to take this over to the sewing machine and just do a gentle baste right along either of the edges here to make sure this is in place for the final step of preparing the back piece, which is going to be basting the lining down. I still have my basting stitch length set, so I don't need to worry about that. Get the right in there and just right along that edge, because we're going to do it again anyway. I am going to back stitch on this because I don't want this to kind of fall apart. There we go. And pull that out and do the other side. Do, 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 do. All right. And that's all you need to do for your basting. Okay, we're going to take our lining for the back piece. We're going to go ahead and flip this over just because it's a little easier to attach it this way. And we're going to take our wrong side and put it against the wrong side, lining up all the little markings and put a clip in place. And I'm going to be doing the basting from the exterior facing up on the sewing machine, mostly because, as you can imagine, it'd be kind of annoying to sew around with the belt sitting out like that and having to like kind of hold it under. So this is how we're going to do it. And we're just going to line everything up. Get those in there. Da, da, da. Okay, more there. Once I get it kind of like situated, I can overcompensate for my lack of confidence and put an additional 20 or 300 clips in here just to hold it down so I don't have a heart attack while I'm sitting at the sewing machine. Anybody else get those feels? I get those feels all the time. Okay, there. And of course, I never accidentally grab the clips and flip them off into the middle of the room when I'm recording. It only happens when I'm sewing, and then nobody believes me. All right, so we're just gonna flop that down, and just like I did with the top, it's a little fussy to do it with the belt in the way, but just kind of like feel around and see if there's any bubbles or gaps in any of this, just so you can kind of fix it if you need to. All right, now we can take this over and baste it. You can start anywhere that you ding dang please, because it doesn't really matter. So I'm just going to start here because it looks cool. So I'm going to just start basting right along that edge. Work my way around. Now I'm not going to flex as hard on this one because I have the belt strap in here, so I definitely don't want anything kind of looking funny. I just work around. There's that curve. And say when pattern designing, getting the curve right with all the math is the hardest part. I think that's why you see so many square-based tote bags out there, is because working with curves can be one heck of a problem if you can't math it. Now, the distinct angle on this actually was something that I figured out after trial and error because I can't math. So don't be like me. Be smarter. All right, and now we're done with that basting. Now for this next part, we're gonna start the main assembly. That means we're gonna take the front and the back panels and attach them to the zippered gusset. For this step, I want you to grab a stapler. That's right, a stapler. You don't need a big stapler. You don't even need an industrial stapler. You just need a stapler. And I say go with one of these smaller office-sized ones because it's a little easier to get into all the nook and the crannies with something like this, as opposed to going to something a little more standard like a big or big. You don't need anything industrial. Again, this little guy works just fine. And the reason I use staples is because it is so much more efficient than using clips. Let's get started. I'll show you exactly how I do it. I like to start with the front panel piece because it's the simplest to do. And for this one, and only this one, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make sure that my zipper is actually zipped up all the way. And the reason I do that is because it's just a little easier. You know, when you have the traditional version with the other side having some canvas on it as well, it's a little easier to attach like that. However, in this case, this is a little more floppy, makes it a little more difficult. So we're gonna take our gusset and we're gonna flip it like that, complete with the fart noise. And we're gonna take the top middle marking and this top middle marking, and we're going to attach it with the non-existent clips that I left over at the sewing machine. Okay, we're gonna take the existing clips that I brought back over from the sewing machine and we're gonna put them in place only where those markings are. Now in this pattern, it might be a little confusing, but when I say the seam here, I actually mean the stitch line. As long as you actually did the seam allowance correctly, the 1/4 inch seam line is right here, not the top stitching, but the seam line. And you want that marking to line up with that. I'm going to put that there. It doesn't matter which way the clips are facing because we're not going to be using them. If you are using them, Godspeed. I'm not going to pay for your medical bills with all the mental health issues that you're going to have from hating using clips. So we're going to take that and line that up again to where the seam line would be for that gusset stitch. And now, because I mathed this correctly, this just sits nicely. You see how it just kind of auto fills all of the little nooks and crannies here very nicely, very nicely. That's all the math to get all of those sitting the way they're supposed to. So now we can go around. We're just going to clip it to make sure, because the thing is you don't want to staple it and be like, well, you know, I could kind of shift it this way or that way. The only thing that matters is that your first 4 line up in the correct spots. Other than that, you can shift wherever. But if you move any of those original 4, then what it'll do is it'll kind of cockeye the panel and the bag won't look like it's even. So go ahead and place all of the clips where they're supposed to go. And I'm actually going to double check this because I think this, like I marked the zipper off a little, and I can see that just in the fact that the side's a little more loose and not exactly lining up to where it's supposed to. So I just shifted that a little bit. What I could have and probably should have done was taken that and folded it in half when I did the marking instead of YOLOing it with a ruler, but you know, this is what we do. So I'm just going to start from the bottom here and use that as a guide from, not the bottom, sorry, from these little side clips. These are the originals, and move those up and just go one at a time as I come to that center, easing that in that direction and seeing if I need to do a little more like work. Okay. And I leave all of my mistakes in place because you guys can learn from my mistakes and not do silly things. So it looks like it's actually going to be just fine. It's just a little fussy on that side. So that's good. And again, we're not going to be given a hoot about any of these clips. We're just using them to verify where everything gets placed. So if you have everything done correctly, really it's the bottom corners that are going to tell you, because basically that lining was just going to settle right down in there and it'll just sit nicely. So we're doing that, so yay. Finish off the clips, but let me say, if you find yourself kind of doing this pulling crap and, well, I can just fold it or whatever, if you find yourself doing that, you've done something way wrong and the measurements are off with the gusset in particular, and you probably didn't stick to the seam allowance like you were supposed to. All right, now for staple magic. Starting at the bottom, I'm going to remove one of those fancy clips I just put in there, and then I'm going to take my stapler and inside the seam allowance, pretty much on the basting line, you can use as a guide, I'm going to plop a staple. And then I'm going to work around and do the exact same thing all the way around. And the reason I'm going to do this is because when you go to the sewing machine and you are stitching and you have to manipulate all of this to get it under the presser foot, especially if you were sewing flat. So like I have a flatbed industrial. These guys cannot hold a grip with all the pressure you're putting on pulling and tugging the fabric to lay flat to avoid any creasing here in the corners all around, but the staples will. So if you've ever gone to the sewing machine and have sewn a gusset and had your clips basically fly across the room on you, try this. It is a game changer. It makes things so much simpler. It does not harm the fabric. It is basically going into the seam allowance, so you won't even have to worry about it. You do have to be careful though to make sure that you catch things and that you don't accidentally go over the seam allowance, like deeper into the actual curvature of the bag, because if you do, there's no fixing that, especially if you're doing vinyl. So you don't want to do it. And also the curves and everything in this pattern were specifically designed for a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So if you try to go over that, or God forbid even under it, it's just not going to look right. It won't math itself out. Now I do go a little heavy on the corners here, and that's just because those are the literal worst areas to try to sew. Oop, get that out of the way. Also, just because I'm doing this with canvas does not mean you cannot do it with a vinyl. I have done many of these in vinyl. They just are a little looser and easier to wear across the body if you do this with a looser fabric like a woven. All right, so all of those staples are going to come out, and I basically just take jewelry pliers and pluck them when I'm ready. I'm gonna get one more in here because not today, Satan. Now, before we head to the sewing machine, I want to give you a couple of tips on how we're going to actually sew this gusset down and have the front panel done. So for the first thing, now that we have the staples in place, you can unzip it. That's going to give you a lot more maneuverability at the machine, so you won't have to worry about trying to like finagle things. Believe it or not, the zipper tape is not as pliable as it looks on the surface. That zipper tape and with the teeth does get in the way and makes it a little difficult for you to manipulate, which is why I move to point number 2. We're going to sew this panel side flat to the machine. That might be a little different than any approach that you've taken, specifically because it looks like it should be sewn from the inside and that you should kind of like wiggle this part up under the machine. But if you do it that way, then you're sewing kind of trying to like do this weird mess. And if you're like me with an industrial machine on a flatbed and I have that compound walking foot, it just doesn't work out for me. So I do this in the flat, specifically with the gusset on the upside and the panel side down. The other thing that I like to do is take a point turner with me so that I don't push my finger down up under the foot while I'm running the machine and crush it. So I can use the point turner to kind of help smooth things and hold stuff in place. You can use a stiletto, not a high heel, but one of those pokey things for poking holes in this fabric and stuff. You can use that, but again, the whole pokey hole thing, I've gotten one too many rips from that, so I don't trust them, hence the point turner. So just to give you a different angle and to demonstrate this one more time before we move to the machine, you're going to take the side with the panel after unzipping it, because that helps, and put it down. Because again, that's going to be the part that's going to be flat no matter what. You want it to be flat. And what we'll have is these corners like this, and you'll be like, what? Oh no, look at all that. But that's what this is for. So you use the point turner to help hold things as we're moving around the corners. So the corners are going to be the trouble spots right up around here, because oh, I hate zipper teeth. But yeah, if you want, you can use a zipper foot. That does help. I'm not going to because reasons. Make sure to set your machine to construction stitch length. So that would be 3.5. I like to start at the bottom center point, and I'm going to just put everything in place for that. Line up for the 1/4 inch seam allowance. Start my stitch, and back stitching, of course. I even do that on vinyl. Everybody can hate me later. So I'm going to go ahead, and you're going to be fine up until about this point where you'll be like, ah, there's like a bunch of fabric in the way right here. So we're going to go up. Sound effects. Great. Okay, now put your needle down. It'll make you feel a little more comfortable. Gently lift that presser foot and just take the point turner and smooth inward, just like that. Stitch a few more and put that needle down. And that's so that the stitch doesn't slide around and you don't have a stable seam there. Smooth it out. Put the needle down and smooth it out. And now we're going to move on to the zipper part. Now the zipper part, like I said, is kind of a pain in my butt. We're just going to do the best that we can here. All right, and so just same thing. Take the point turning tool and smooth it out. And then you will just be able to work your way around. Until you get to the flat section. Now you can see why I've actually unzipped the zipper on the gusset for this part, because it makes it a lot easier, but you're also going to want to unzip it anyway before you attach the back. Otherwise, you'll have no way of flipping this right side out, and then you'll hate yourself. All right, now we're coming up on the other corner, and I see that I didn't really staple it the best way possible. So what I'm gonna need to do is just grab that with what little fingernails I have left and pull it over. I'm just gonna go, meh. Okay, get rid of that, yeah, let go. Oh my God, stop embarrassing me like this on the internet. All right, it's gonna be good enough for me. All right, there we go. All right, I'm gonna pull that over and just go slow. There we are. And I'm gonna pull again, just kind of like nudge that over to the edge. And again, holding it with the little point turner. and go down. Now you'll see we're coming up on the zipper head. So my my needle is halfway down already. So I'm just gonna go ahead and kind of wiggle it out of the way and then straighten out and flatten the panel underneath and continue to the last of the corners from hell. That was nice when I can hear my belt slip on my bag or machine, right? And slip, dip, 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 dip. Needle down, point turner, and you don't have to use a point turner. Like, you don't have to get anything fancy. I mean, we 3D printed this, but heck, you can use a pencil if you want. A chopstick. Chopsticks are great as well if you've got those hanging around. Just use anything that could help you smooth out and hold without shoving your finger under there. This thing is quite hefty. All right, and that is how we did that. And now the front panel is attached. So go back to your workstation and get some needle nose pliers. At least I think that's what these are called. Anyway, get jewelry pliers. And you're gonna wanna go in and grab those staples and just rip them out and set them off to the side. And that's literally all I do is rip them. You could use, if you want, you could use like stapler removers, but I actually find that I have a higher risk of ripping and tearing into the fabric when I do that, because sometimes the teeth sink into the fabric, and at least for this, they're just popping right out for me, and I don't really have any issues. It's especially easier when you're using vinyl, because the vinyl is basically too thick, and so sometimes the staples don't really sink in as much as you'd like. It works to hold them for the sewing process, but not so much, like, they're not as strong as you'd think. You might want to look into getting some thicker staples if you're doing vinyl, but YOLO. All right, keep going around, and we're going to remove those. Try to move quickly for the sake of the video, because I just don't want to like play forward. But, you know, whatever. Let's do that, because you know what I'm doing. I'm going to remove all of these, and then next time we come back, it'll be like magic. Now that the staples have magically disappeared, I like to turn this right side out just to double check all of the little corners and make sure that they are laying flat, that I don't have any weird buckling, creasing, or whatever that sometimes you can get from attaching gussets like this. Right? Fabulous. Yes, yes. All right, so let's talk about top stitching and how we want to handle this. So at this stage in making the bag, I do like to apply the binding to the front panel first, only because with the production edition and not having this back fabric piece, it causes the zipper to want to kind of roll forward. So you need to top stitch this down, but you can't do that until you have it bound, because then you will have all this raw fabric on the inside and really dangerously close to your zipper teeth. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through the binding process for the bag on the front panel and then top stitching it, because you're just going to love doing it when we don't have the back panel in the way. This hot mess right here is fold over elastic. I like to use fold over elastic for my bias binding, and the reason for that is really simple. It already has a fold in it so that I can watch that crease and know that I'm catching it evenly on either side. Also elastic, it's pretty cool and bouncy. If you want to use bias tape, you can totally do that, but I do the fold over elastic method, and I do have other videos on how to do that, but I am still gonna go through the whole process for this. So we're gonna start at the bottom. Let's go ahead and flip this back so that it is inside out. Whee! Same thing, leaving the panel flat. And I might get a little hate for this, but I actually just clip the very, very beginning of it. I don't go and pre-clip and get everything set up ahead of time. And the reason for that is very simple. I never get the measurement right, and I find that it's easier, at least with the fold over elastic, to kind of pull a little bit and sew a little at a time. So let's go with that. So you can use a top stitch length for this. So I'm going to go back up to 4.5 millimeters. And I just set this down at the bottom middle, right there. And I'm going to keep my exact same seam allowance, if not just a little inward. The only point of this is so that you don't have raw edges showing. So it doesn't even matter. You don't want to go further in, and you don't want to go like right up on the edge. You just need to make sure that your stitches are going to go into that seam allowance that's just hanging off the side. That's another reason why I did not trim it down. And the corners are shaped specifically to be able to handle this amount of bulk when it's flipped right side out. So we're going to start our stitch just like that. Get that clip out of the way. Now, while the needle is in the fabric, about halfway down, give it a very slight tug. You don't want to pull it like you're bungee jumping, but just give it a really slight tug. Maybe like pull it back about 1/2 inch to 1 inch and just kind of nestle it in there. And you can follow that fold line. There's a little bit of a seam there, and just put the clip to hold it for yourself. And you can hold with your fingers. I do it with the fingers on this one. And again, I'm just going to go slightly inside the 1/4 inch marking. And go ahead, put the needle halfway down, pivot a bit, and snuggle in. Get that middle seam along the edge, and then slowly YOLO yourself around the corner, halfway down, and then tug and place. Now, as you come up toward the zipper, I'm going to give you a little bit of unsolicited advice. You do not want this at any point to go anywhere near the zipper teeth, because if you do, it's going to get caught in the zipper teeth no matter what you do later on, etc., etc. You do want to be careful. So on this point in particular, you might want to have a little bit more of the elastic binding, whatever, on the back side than on the top side where the zipper teeth are, because you need to keep this away from the zipper teeth. So if you see me kind of not doing 50-50, that is why. So we're going to go around again and pivot, pivot. And tugging it also really does help with kind of helping with those, lay everything flat. And don't worry, that's just my foot being fussy, grabbing things along the way. And halfway down. Now go across. Boop. My sound effects are fabulous. Well, it looks like I've got a knot in my, yeah, I've got a knot in this, so I'm just gonna work that out real quick. It was a hot mess. Like Beth Dutton trying to skip dinner. All right, halfway down, pull, pivot. And there, and halfway down, and more pivoting for humor. Boop. Again, it's very far away from the teeth, but this is exactly what we want. It's definitely going to catch it on the other side, and at least the shorter side is the one that's up facing you, so you don't have to worry about it. Now, we're going to get close to that zipper head. I'm going to go ahead at this point and slide it up just while we're here, so it's out of the way. Clip. And go. There. Now once you get further down and you're beyond the zipper point, you can 50-50 it again. Wunderbar. Now we're coming up to the end. So what I can do is I can pull this back and I can be like, okay, I need to cut about here. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cut that and I'm going to finish that seam. So I'm going to grab that. Boop. Move this entire pile over there. And just to be clean, go ahead and clip those little seams over there. And this is not going to fray. It looks like it, but it actually won't. And just lay it as flat as best you can, flush at the end there. And again, like I always tell people, if somebody's looking at the inside of your bag, you've done something completely wrong with the outside. So don't worry if this isn't pretty. It's not meant to be pretty. It's meant to just cover up the raw edges. You don't want the bag falling apart on you, especially if you're doing like I'm doing and using something that is woven and tends to fray. All right, so that is how you do the bias binding. And you can see all the way around, it's pretty darn nice. We'll look at the other side just for a little flex, but it looks really darn nice. And we caught everything, and all of the seams are basically covered up. Now for the next part, what we're gonna do is top stitch. We're only going to top stitch along the zipper part of the gusset. And again, the reason that we're going to be doing that is so that the zipper doesn't roll forward and out of the bag and look really puffy and weird from the front. So if I were just walk you through it, the way that we're gonna do it on the machine is you're gonna go ahead and unzip the whole thing like that. And this part of the gusset needs to get out of the way. You can, and this is why I say you bias bind and then top stitch the front before you do the back, because you would not be able to do this once you had the back in place. And again, you'd be cussing a lot. Like, just learn from me. So you see how, especially now that we've bound it, that zipper just wants to come and fold its way out. So the whole point of the top stitch is to go around and basically tack down the zipper and the binding so that the zipper stays upright like this. So we're gonna start right around here. And you don't have to start right at the gusset. It depends on what you've done. I have a very pliable fabric and setup right now, so that's okay. I don't need to clip anything in place because I'm gonna go a little bit at a time and just finger press down the bias binding on the other side. So that will help immensely with this. And you do need to go slowly. And even if you are using a domestic machine right now, this is still pretty thick. So be careful, use a larger needle if you need it, and go slowly. So let's pop over to the machine and I'm gonna show you how I do it. I use a top stitch length for this. So again, I already kind of have that set. I'm gonna lay this pretty darn flat. Again, it just matters how much room you can wiggle around with your machine. And I try to keep right along the edge here. I don't want to go too deep or I'm not going to catch that bias tape. Well, or in my case, just, you know, fold over elastic Cheatyville. So green. You see, I'm apprehensive. but I just pull this and tuck under, making sure that everything is pulled out. Kind of like when we did the gusset originally and I pulled the two pieces of fabric away to make sure that zipper tape wasn't kind of bunching up. We're gonna do that and then slowly crawl around, pulling and laying that bias binding where it needs to be. And I would say definitely don't ever pivot, lift the foot or anything without the needle halfway down. Okay. It's down, so we'll continue moving this way. Okay. And we're coming up to the other side of that gusset. If you don't feel comfortable with this, you can again use the point turner. It's just for this part, I actually feel a-okay. It's kind of ironic. So hold that down. And then for this last part, you might have to bend a bit, but again, take care not to smack the zipper head here. You can't really move it at this point because of how the bag is kind of sitting and straddling the needle. But since I am using canvas, I can get down this far. So we're gonna go up to that and then back and done. And that's how you do that. Ta-da! So now when you come over and you just flip this part to the outside, take care to set your binding in place. So around the bottom, you're just going to want to use your fingers to roll out that seam along the bottom. And then for the top, you won't have to because you just stitch that mess down. So now you can zip it and basically see what it's going to look like. That looks a lot more stable. The zipper isn't rolling. And of course, the bias tape isn't anywhere near the zipper teeth, and so you're not going to have any issues zipping and unzipping the bag. Right, so at this point, the next step is going to be doing everything all over again with the clips and the staples for the back side. So I'm not going to narrate that. I'm going to record it and then let it play over a little quicker so that the video isn't 50 hours long. Now that we have the front panel on, we're ready to do the back panel. The back panel is pretty much the exact same directions as for the front panel, minus the top stitching. The thing is, I don't want this video to be 50 hours long, and I don't want you to hate the sound of my voice any more than I do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to record it. I will add it to the video just after this, but it's going to be sped up and have some swanky music to it, so that you can skip ahead if you want, or you can slow it down and watch it at a normal speed if you need to see some of the technique again. The important thing to note before you go and you sew the back of the bag is to make sure that you unzip that zipper gusset. If you don't unzip the zipper gusset, you're not going to be able to reach in and flip the bag to the right side, and you're going to hate yourself and others around you. So without further ado, let's go ahead and sew the thing fast. Great, so everything is done, and as long as you remember to leave the zipper open, you can flip this bad boy right side out. And again, I've done birthing videos in the past, so I don't really need to go into a whole lot of detail with this one. This is really easy to flip right side out because of the bias binding, and we didn't have to do any weird trickery like I did with the convention raider to get the pocket to have no bias binding. So we're just gonna flip her right side out, like so. So beautiful. And push out, basically roll out all of that bias binding in the back area. And we're gonna zip it up. And realize I probably shouldn't have tightened it up so much because reasons. Okay, let's loosen it up a bit for the demonstration. Stop embarrassing me on the internet, oh my God. Okay. See, I ain't gonna go anywhere the way that I do these, but, and I've got my little friend here, so of course I don't want to jostle him loose just for the sake of doing crossbody, but now we have the production edition of the Purrfect Pouch on our beautiful large waist. Now is the time on Sprockets where we dance with the bags that we just finished, yeah. Anywho, this is probably how most people are going to be caught wearing them. It's the only way I see people wearing these things because nobody wants to wear a bum pack or a proper belt bag the way they were intended to. But either way, it's really cool, and congratulations on finishing your bag. If you made it this far, please feel free to like the video, subscribe to the channel because I do really awesome things all of the time, duh. And don't forget to tag me in socials for any of your creations that you have made from this tutorial and pattern. If you want the pattern, the link is available in the description below, or you can just go to fiercekitten.com and search for the sewing patterns page. Goodbye!